Welcome to Your Mind is Trying to Kill You podcast. Join your host, Alexandros and co-host Vincent Byrne as they walk you through the deepest recesses of the mind and how it operates. They discuss all the reasons why our minds persistently get in the way of our evolution, growth, and our success. But crucially, they also teach you what you can do to change your destiny. And now, here's your host, Alexandros.
Hello and welcome to the 29th episode of the Your Mind is Trying to Kill You podcast. I am your host, Alexandros.
And I'm your co-host, Vincent Byrne.
And today you had another question, my friend, didn't you? You're full of questions. You're like one big question mark. I like that about you. So what was it?
Yeah, people have said that about me. I'm one big question mark, all right. You see, I spend the whole week wondering what I'm going to say, and then I never have anything useful to say until we're 5 minutes before takeoff. So, in typical form, had to quickly come up with this one, which I think was interesting because it related to an incident that I had last week when someone got really angry about a situation that I was in. And they told me afterwards that they felt really angry about something I was doing, except I didn't know I was doing it. They didn't. They seemed to have a problem with what I was doing, and they just were triggered by it. And it said, okay, so why do we do that? Why is it that things, completely innocuous things in a lot of cases, trigger us and get us to a place of being really angry, and we end up even having conversations about ourselves, about what we're going to say to the person, when we see them, and we play the whole thing out, and yet nothing has actually happened to create that problem. So I thought I'd run that one by you and get your wisdom on it.
Being triggered is what I'm very good at. Not being triggered, but triggering, actually. Believe it or not. But what does it mean to be triggered, first of all? It is very, not coincidentally, used in a way that we would, in a fashion that we would use to describe the action of a gun being used. Being triggered means being fired up, developing an explosive mood because of some reason. And of course, the usual way that this is being understood, perceived in the world is that the reason is always external. Like am being triggered by you because you dared to say something to me or to think something about me or of me that I didn't like. So, and that made me angry. What is that based on? I mean, come on. We know that all this stuff is fertile ground for the subconscious mind that is filled with viruses and programs. And we also know that nothing can bother you. Nothing should be able to trigger you if you don't have these matching programs within you. Like I shouldn't be able to make you angry if what I'm talking about you have no programs for. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So to bring up a good example, let's assume that I was very self-conscious about I don't know, my weight, right? And whether or not, it doesn't matter actually, because a lot of people are self-conscious about their weight and their looks, and I would look at these people and be like, you got to be insane. I mean, you're gorgeous. I mean, right? It happens all the time. So, which means that the perception of yourself, about yourself, has almost always nothing to do with any reality basis. So, let's say then that I was very self-conscious about my weight. I thought I was overweight, or maybe I am in some ways. So then you come over to me. You like to pretend you're my mother, because my mother would say something like that, and be like, "Oh, hi, look at you. You're getting fat." Of course, then me being self-conscious about the fact that, oh, I may be getting fat, or I am, or I could, or whatever. Instantly, this kind of comment hits that kind of program within me, within my subconscious mind, and it triggers it, which is to say, activates it. And activates it, and the program runs wild, right? Because that's what it is when we activate something. So this is like a game, a switch, if you will, being triggered. It's a switch. So it will be safe to assume that no one can trigger you. Nothing can trigger you if you don't have that trigger, that switch within you in the first place, right? It cannot happen. It cannot happen. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that someone comes to you and says to you, Vincent, there's one thing about you. You're really stupid, right? I would assume, unless you have some kind of residual programming from conditioning, like, because a lot of times we do, of course, growing up, mama or papa would say something, oh, well, how can you be so stupid? You did something, like, I don't know, something not that important, like setting the house on fire, you know what I mean? Or decapitating the dogs. And then everybody goes apeshit, you know what I mean? Anyway, so someone asked you, why are you so stupid, man? I mean, you would, I'm assuming, laugh about that. You would find that funny, right? You wouldn't get angry. Am I correct?
Yeah.
You would, because it would seem preposterous to you, which is to say, there would be no fertile ground where someone threw a seed, it would be like hitting concrete, I mean, there's nothing there. This cannot grow, this cannot trigger anything, this cannot turn on any switch, because there's no switch being there, no switch existing. So that is one of the most important parts that most people, a lot of people, I always say that, I've gotten comments. I have been chastised before for saying most people, how dare you? See, people are being triggered. Correcting myself. Some people don't know.
Some of the majority of people.
Not all the people. They don't have that clear definition within them that this is what is going on. Because if they did, the moment they got angry, they would self-reflect and self-correct. Because, I mean, we all get triggered. It happens to all of us. Right? I mean, I could even get triggered for like a political statement. You know what I mean? I could be like, what this is bullshit? And that, in essence, is being triggered. But at that very moment that I'm feeling like that, I laugh it off usually, because I realize, oh, look at me. Look at me being triggered. It's funny to me when that happens. But, there is no one else to blame, right? And one of our podcasts, I had mentioned that this is quite literally, perhaps, the definition of insanity, right? If I can use a single word that was like the you're turning into the automaton, into an automaton podcast. Yeah, if I can use a single word to set you on fire, then who are you, right? It's like, how are you a free, sovereign being? No, you're not, right? You're either insane or you are a fully programmed device, right? I can press a button and then produce a reaction on you.
And a predictable reaction.
And very predictable one, yeah. So here's the even worse part about this. People feel righteous in their being triggeredness, right? They feel right. They feel good about it, right? They think that this makes them better people, you see. So, like, if someone can say, if someone can call you a racist because you didn't go down and riot and, burn a few cars and destroy a few buildings, which, it's a perfectly good activity. Just blow off some steam. You got to do it once in a while. I get it. So, but if you're against that kind of thing, someone goes like, you're a racist. And, the person who says that, they feel good about themselves. They feel like, oh yeah, I am contributing to creating a better society, right? Because fuck them racists, you know what I mean? So, but this is it's real. It's real insane. It's an insane way to live a life. Now, that's one aspect of it. This is one way to look at it. Yeah, it's insanity, right? But someone could say, yeah, man, but it's a lot of fun. No, but in some ways, I would say you're correct. But here's what happens. If you look at this from above, like a blueprint of a house, if you look at your life like that is, you would, being the extremely magical being that you are, always consider what your end goal is. So, in other words, what are you bringing? What are you manifesting into the world? And the ones that are actively working towards manifesting something they want in their lives, they know that kind of activity requires a lot of energy, a lot of attention, a lot of sobriety, mind sobriety, and of course physical sobriety as well, I guess,
and awareness,
of course. So if you are occupying any of your time and energy, and when I talk about energy, I'm referring to emotional energy, right? Because that's the only kind that matters. So if you are dedicating any of this energy to, go out there and fight the good fight, whatever that means, and be pissed off at people and throw shit around and, protest like the free thinker that you are, then what? First of all, what are you doing? What are you contributing to? Secondly, what are you creating within your life? Because the smallest damage that you can do doing something like that is deprive yourself from the time and energy to create for yourself. But there's a lot usually it's just completely, that kind of behavior compounds itself. The more we do something, the more it becomes a habit. You know what I mean? Like you see, people. There are people out there that define themselves like that. Like it's my personality. I get it. You know what I mean? I have anger issues. But what is that? This isn't like some kind of physiological. Unless you're insane, quite literally. There's no physiological characteristic that would make you have anger issues. The anger issues are issues that are connected to conditioning, programming of all kinds of sorts. And then, of course, these programs, the more you abide by them, and especially if you say to yourself or anybody else that, that's how I am. I'm just angry. You know what I mean? I get pissed off easily. That's my personality. And you identify yourself like that, of course, you solidify that kind of behavior. So, and what good does this do for you? It's quite literal, as if you are starting fires within your house, right? This is what it is. Like having like lighter fluid, and then going into the different rooms of your house and squirting some of that stuff and lighting it on fire, then going to another room, lighting on fire, and then, going outside, but oh shit, there's smoke, there's a fire in there, running over, trying to put it out. And as you're putting this one out, right, the other one just flares up. And this is what happens, man. At the end of the day, what do? You're destroying your house, and by the end of the day, even if you save your house, right, what do you got? You are exhausted. You are nothing. You turn into mush. You turn into shit. And clearly then, there is nothing to accomplish other than what you have created for yourself, which is total and utter destruction. And a program to match that, which means that you will do that tomorrow as well. And the more you do it, the more cemented that behavior will become. Am I coherent?
Yeah. So, I mean, what's interesting about that, I mean, it all comes back to the programming. And what was interesting about the situation that I was in last week was that I actually didn't do anything. As in, I didn't do anything. I didn't say that the guy was fat, or I didn't, say something to him that could be misinterpreted. I actually was going about my business. And it was something that he observed in the way I was going about my business that actually got him to feel angry. And he told me afterwards that he was sitting stewing because he had all this thought process going on in his head and this conversation going on in his head. And the more he did, the more he got. So I was completely carrying on instantly. He interpreted something that I did in a way and then created this big stew for himself. As you said, he lit a load of fires because the only one that was suffering in this situation was him, because I was completely oblivious to what was going on. I remember a statement by I think it was Wayne Dyer, but it could have been quoted from somebody else, where he said, to want to get revenge on someone is like taking cyanide and expecting the other person to die, which is kind of what was going on in that situation.
By the way, as a parenthesis, when you say stewing, it's just, you're making me hungry. If he said that to me, I would have been like, you should have told me, man. I would have bought potatoes, carrots, and onions.
Yeah, I would have brought the lentils.
Look, but what was that program? What was the program? Can you identify what the program that he was dealing with was?
I think it was, and I would have spotted it before. It's almost like he needs to be in control of everything. and including the need to ensure that everyone is doing what he wants them to do. So I wasn't doing what he wanted me to do in the way that he wanted me to do it. He thought from afar that I was doing it wrong because I wasn't doing it his way. And that's what was getting him wound up. And to me, I took that as being, this guy needs to be in control of his whole environment and all the people that are in it. And therefore, when they're not, he starts getting really stressed out about it. That was my interpretation of it.
Yeah, definitely control. But the way that I look at it, the guy clearly felt that he owned you.
Yes.
You know, like you are his property. So then if you're his property, how dare you do things, you know, think for yourself. You know, why would you do that? So once again, even look, being triggered. That's just what being triggered is the new virus. Even if I say virus, that's a trigger in and of itself.
But hang on, you have an antidote.
Yes, of course. It is it's a new virus. The idea here is this, but you know, then again, look, people have built their entire lives, their entire personalities. They have trusted that a system around them is there to help them, is there to provide for them because it cares about them. If you have that kind of like inner acceptance and trust that the system around you is designed to help you, then you see it's very hard to detach yourself from that. Because everything revolves around that, right? If the system, because I can't, if I say, for example, that someone, a politician, that's a very good example, politician says, you know, blah, 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 you know, out there, and everyone's like, holy shit, you know, I'm going to fuck shit up because it's bullshit. If you think that politician actually cares about you, then that's what you respond to. Or, I mean, you know, or the other way around. You know, that politician hates you because the other politician cares about you, right? So how do you step away from that?
But I think you're like in the case of the politician, I think what triggers people is that they have this view that because I think some of the trigger comes not just from what might be said or what might be done. It also comes from who is doing it. So if somebody, you know, your friend walks in and pees on your leg, you have one response. And if your dog walks in and pees on your leg, you've got another response. So you're kind of not surprised to some extent if a dog does it because, well, that's kind of what dogs do. I know yours wouldn't, but in a lot of cases that's what dogs do. But then when somebody who you wouldn't expect or someone who you thought more about you comes in and does it, that's when it's an issue. It's like you can put it into context if in certain circumstances, and then in others it completely triggers you because it's not what's supposed to be happening. So in the case of politicians, people have this view that politicians are supposed to be there for the greater good of the community because they spend their time telling people that they're there for the greater good of the community just to get themselves elected. When the reality of it is that when they get in, all they're interested is in themselves and perpetuating their own career for as long as they possibly can. And they couldn't give a shit about anybody else. But everyone expects them to do it. So when they do something, everyone gets up in arms, or lots of people get up in arms, because they think that it shouldn't be happening. when the reality is that when you would stop and think and look at the individual and go, look at all the evidence where he's done this stuff before. Why are you surprised that this is happening now?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, this reminds me of that. I believe it's a Native American story of this old woman that it was like really cold, a cold winter, and then she was gathering wood, to go firewood, to light a fire, and she saw a snake out there being like almost frozen, and she felt bad and picked up the snake and brought it over to her cave, wherever she was living, a teepee.
Come on, you should know this.
Watch out, you might trigger people here. So, and then, she warmed up the snake, gave the snake some soup. Here's some chicken soup, snake. And the snake revived. Was revived and felt good about himself. And next thing you know, he lashes on and bites the lady, right? And the lady's like, dude, what the fuck? I helped you out, man. I saved your life. And to which he replies, bitch, you know it's a snake. That's what I do. It's my job. You know what I mean? It's just fucking, I gotta bite you. That's what I do for a living. You know what I mean? So people don't want to accept that they live in a world where the people that were supposed to be taking care of them, i.e. the politicians, are actually laughing behind their backs and all the way to the bank. But, that's just one example of what would trigger people. But triggering happens left and right, Like I say, if my wife would say something to me about something, and immediately I know. See, when you live with someone for a while and you get in tune, you are in a position to expect the trigger. You know what I mean? Like, starts talking about something and you know it's coming. So, but I always laugh because it's as it turns out. If I do say so myself, I've done a little more work on my triggers than my wife has. So I can trigger her a lot easier than she can trigger me. And when I do, I only do to help her identify her triggers and because it's fun. So
I think you got those in the wrong order.
I guess maybe. But look, the idea here is, and even if we're talking about something that's innocent and funny and goofy, like I could say one thing to my wife and trigger her, be like, "Hey, where's my dinner?"
Yeah. The dog.
Yeah. To which you reply, I'm cooking, God. These are fun ways to, spend your time at home or in the doghouse. But, at the end of the day, these are very easy little exercises to start realizing in how many ways we have been conditioned. To me, this is, wow. I never take this lightly, nor do I ever take this for granted, because I always know I'm expecting to either hear it, right, or perceive it. This is what happened with that dude, the one that was the boss of the world that gave you the hard time because he was stewing without carrots and potatoes. So what is going on is many times we'll just see something and perceive. The trigger is perceived. It's not just offered, to us. It's not like something that someone says. I give you a good one for a perceived trigger, right? You see older women, actually, or men, would see like a young girl being very lightly dressed, like wear like sexy clothes and stuff, and be like, oh, that whore. that is a massive trigger. It's a trigger because this isn't even. Do you realize that this isn't even a trigger that has to do with the person themselves, right? They're not even being they're messed with, but
they're oblivious to the fact that it's going on.
Of course, they're oblivious, but they think that it's like this is not right. How dare she? You know what I mean? This is indecent. It offends me. When in essence something else is going on. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give you an example. With myself, sometimes in the past more so, I would look at. I used to actually be a lot like that. Not at all anymore. Like I would see someone like a successful entrepreneur, be like, I don't know, like Grant Cardone. and immediately I'd think, God damn it, it's like this dude is like ripping people off or whatever. Maybe not ripping people off, but it's like living to be rich. The fuck? This is not a way to live a life. It's like, how dare you? You know what I mean? It's like, this isn't like, don't make people think that money is everything in life. And you know what I mean? You are creating a warped sense of reality for so many people. How dare you? When, in reality, that was my trigger about the fact that, somewhere deep inside, I wished I could be in that position with all these millions, and affecting so many people myself. And so I saw that and I felt disempowered, you see, and that is a major trigger. It's a major trigger.
Mm. And isn't it? I mean, I had a conversation with someone last week. It came out of the. It was actually talking about the idea of beauty treatments and people getting Botox and fillers and all this kind of stuff, and the point I was making was that the advertising industry presents scenarios to people which, even though I didn't use the word at the time, effectively triggers them, because it presents this perfect looking person who's, oh look, she's 55 or she's 58 and she hasn't got any wrinkles, and we have the solution. So you have the people who are in that age bracket looking and goes, I could do something about my wrinkles, and all of a sudden they're been presented with solutions to inject themselves with poison and fillers and all kinds of shit by medical doctors in a lot of situations, which is another day's rant for me. But it's all based on the fact that it's playing into insecurities, i.e. triggers that people have. So it's very clever of the advertising industry to make people feel shit enough to then go and want to have these solutions in order to make them feel less shit. And I remember reading the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. I don't know if you ever came across it, but he was a German plastic surgeon back in the 1920s and 30s and onwards, and he most of his work initially would have been plastic surgery for people who were in accidents or correcting birth defects and things like that. But every so often, he would have people coming to him who, because of they weren't happy with how they looked, and they'd want some kind of, face adjustment or nose job or whatever it might be. And the problem was that after he had done a number of these procedures on people, the reaction that those people had was, did you actually do anything? I'm after going through all this surgery and I don't look any different. I don't look any better. You haven't fixed my problem. So he ended up actually he used to send people off and get them to do exercises with a psychologist before he agreed to do the surgery. Because a lot of the time the surgery was never going to solve the problem. It was just they were being constantly triggered by the looks of other people, and they then wanting to be like that. And therefore the solution was plastic surgery. And I think that's the insidious way that industry actually operates now, because they keep trying to get people to feel bad about themselves by presenting scenarios that trigger them.
Absolutely. That, who would know that better than me? But here's another concept. Having said that, the marketing and advertising industry, people say that all the time. The marketing and advertising industries are the devil, because they're making us do this, think that, or whatever. But here's another, and I know I have said that myself. We have actually touched upon this on this podcast.
We have recordings of it, yeah.
That's right. So I'm not going back on my word or anything. But all I'm saying is I'm presenting now a different perspective here. And that perspective says, I cannot make you do anything. And this is relating 100% to what it is that we're talking about. I cannot make you do anything. I can only trigger you. So how can I trigger you? I can trigger you if I discover that you already have this shit lying inside. Just like that, I was going to say that scumbag, Edward Bernays, who was pretty much the father of PR, or as I call it, BS. But he found out how to trigger millions of people by communicating with his uncle was Sigmund Freud, and he had come up with his whole theory about the unconscious or whatever subconscious mind and all the insecurities that people have and so on and so forth, and the sexual repression. And so according to that, there were all these things that all people according to Freud are dealing with. They have all these weak spots that someone could, if they step on those spots, on those switches, on those triggers, manipulate them, make them do things, right? And that's what the entire marketing, advertising, PR industry is based on. So, but here's the question now, because if we were to go and say, oh, fuck you, marketing, advertising, PR industries, I will set you on fire, we would then ourselves be triggered by the fact that we are not looking at the cause of this, because the advertising and marketing industries and PR industries are not the cause of this. Our own triggers are the cause of this. Because if we weren't, I like your glasses, by the way. You look so sophisticated, my friend.
Thank you. I thought we were getting to a stage where we needed to get more serious.
One of us has to do it, and everyone knows it's not going to be me. So, you know what I mean? So the triggers have to go, because if the triggers not, it's like it's like trying to eliminate the fires all the time instead of eliminating the flammable shit that you have laying around. You know, it takes a lot more effort, you know what I mean? And if you eliminate the flammable shit, then you take care of that once and for all. But if you're trying to put out fires every time, you know, that has no ending because there's always flammable shit around.
So how do we, given that it's the virus, what's the vaccine?
The vaccine. Oh, well, the vaccine is not as easy as most people would want it to be. Because we're talking about, once again, working on yourself. We're talking about working on your programs, working on your conditioning, being introspective, developing your awareness, your consciousness. When something happens, understanding that when something happens that makes you upset, that upset is not coming from the outside.
It's not coming from the thing. It's not coming from the incident. It's coming from our reaction and our perspective about the incident.
Yes, that always. And I think in and of itself, that if people understood that part, then that would be the vaccine right there. Because, once you identify that, I shouldn't be, I shouldn't be mad at the fact that this happened. I shouldn't be mad at the incident. I should be mad at, what causes the incident. Or, I shouldn't be mad at all, I guess. But if I have to react to something, let that something be reacting to the fact that I am the cause. Be the cause. This is the vaccine is be the cause in your life. Do not be the reaction, be the action. Be the cause, don't be the result. Everyone should know. I mean, this is, I could say, across the board. Every time we found ourselves in a shitty emotional situation, and I say shitty emotional situation because these are the ones that count, I guess. Because nobody ever complains. If I feel really happy and joyful. So, if I find myself in that situation, it's fair to say that 100% of the time, that the cause of that is something within me. So if I have to react, let me react on that premise and then start taking measures to fix, to realign, to reframe, if you will, whatever is going on inside of me. Why do I think, because if you just ask a few questions, right? The why questions. So your friend over there who was stewing, I love that. I just love this expression. He was stewing because you were not on your knees, thanking him for giving you employment. So the question that we would ask is, why is the guy, the question that he should be asking is, why am I feeling like that? I feel kind of shitty and pissed off right now, and I'm stewing. And the worst part about me stewing is that there's no food to eat after I'm done stewing. So, why am I feeling like that? I feel like that because that bastard Vincent, he should be my slave. What? Why should he be my slave? Because I'm paying him. What? Why am I paying him? You know what I mean? Like if you start asking these questions, then you will inevitably, right? If you're being honest with yourself, you will come across the actual reason why you're pissed off. I'm pissed off because, as far as I'm concerned, he belongs to me. People get pissed off when their boyfriend or their girlfriend, cheats on them. How dare you? How could you do this to me? I gave my life for you, you bastard. So, but look, when we understand that Everyone is free to do whatever the fuck they want. Right? I mean, if it's like, would you rather your boyfriend or girlfriend be either hiding the fact that they're cheating on you or be pushing themselves, making themselves stay with you even if they don't feel like maybe they don't love you anymore? Right? And it's like, why would I be angry at someone for leaving me if they don't like me anymore? That Alexandros is an asshole. Like, fuck him, I'm gonna just go. Right? And it's like, if that's how you feel, what can I do? Right? What can I do to affect that? My dogs are reaffirming exactly this is like the universe saying, you're right.
They're joining in the chorus there. You tell them, Daddy.
Oh, which is actually perfect point. Perfect point. Now, look, what's happening, right? Why are the dogs barking? Why the dogs? Because something you could say it's the nature of the dog, but it's something that is being reinforced within the dog one way or the other. This is what the socializing of the dogs. As a matter of fact, I'd say what? It's really funny. My boy, German Shepherd, Wolfie, he was the most silent dog, especially of this size, you would ever meet in your life. Like, you wouldn't just, there's nothing, like never, you wouldn't hear, you would never hear him. And then we brought him over to a friend of ours that had an older German Shepherd that was woof, 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 And that dog taught my dog how to woof, woof, woof. Do you know what I mean? So think about that for a second. So the dogs are triggered to when they see, I mean, it doesn't matter whether or not they feel that this is a threat. To them, it's always a threat. You see, this is like the subconscious mind responding to a situation, being triggered out of a program that's been there, that has been there, and being compounded and reinforced. So the dogs see the car coming down the driveway, the truck, whatever, the mailman, and they're like, woof, 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 I'll fuck you up. But they don't know whether or not really that's a threat. But they take it by default that I gotta woof, 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 because this is how I protect my home. That's how I protect my loved ones, you see. But in essence, that's how you interrupt a really important podcast.
It is, but with an important message that can be gleaned from the interruption.
But why? That message is important because I discovered it. You see, this is about asking the question when it happens.
Yeah.
Right?
But the starting point is to have the awareness to either pull yourself back. Well, for me, the way that I began to do this was and I don't do it every time. I'm sure people who know me will point it out. But what I got to was that after the event, I would then just go back and say what actually happened there. And this might be a couple of days later, but what actually happened there, and I would try to actually look through the steps that actually caused me to feel the way that I did. And then as I became better at doing it, it became easier for me to see that I was being triggered or that I was going to a place which wasn't very rational, and I would be able to see quickly what the steps that I was going through in my mind. Not that I was conscious of going through those steps, but when I was asking the questions why, as you said, you were starting to piece them together. Oh, that's what my mind did in literally one step from 0 to 100, but actually it went through a series of steps that you just weren't aware of at the time. So if you can slow it down and look at what actually happened, then that process in itself, whether it gives you the right answers or not, at least shows that you have the awareness to take that. The difficulty is remembering back to when I knew nothing about this, was that I would just be angry for days or upset for days about a particular situation and have no real capacity to get myself out of it other than something else distracting me. And I certainly wouldn't have had the wherewithal to think I really should go back and analyze that situation and find out why I did it. So that's really the thing. That's what I discovered, that I needed to just go back and reflect and break things down a little bit. And then as you do it more deliberately after the event, it becomes easier to do while the event is going on or within a short space of time after the event happens. I think that was what did it for me.
Definitely. That's how it should be. And that's how we should all be doing it. And we should be doing that daily. Now, here's the thing. Once again, it's just like going to the gym, Yeah. Or practicing anything for that matter. If you practice, stewing, then you'll be doing more of that. You practice analyzing that kind of stuff, and guess what? Very soon, you will find yourself not being able to get yourself to stew, because immediately you're like, oh shit. It's like you are blowing your own cover. You're seeing, you're coming across your own bullshit. And by saying that, I don't mean that you're wrong to be, upset at some situation. That's not what I mean. That I mean that you are doing yourself a disservice if you're pointing the finger towards the situation rather than finding out why that situation is affecting you.
And the funny thing was that in the situation of that I described, there was a time when I would have reacted to that in a negative way. I either would have been very upset on hearing it, or I would have got angry, or possibly got into an argument. But I was actually in a situation and I was observing it, and I was going, oh dear, what are you on? It was like what was being said was totally not having no impact whatsoever. And I was really just looking to the guy saying, what is it that's going on for you that has you thinking like that? Because it's certainly nothing to do with me. And that's I think where you get to. You're able to say, oh, well, that's the dog that did that. What would you expect from the dog? I mean, everything gets explained. So you actually become significantly more powerful in situations. Not that you need to dominate people, but powerful in the sense that you have a greater ability to look after yourself, but you also in many respects have the ability to look after the other people. Because I found myself having a conversation about that with the guy, and he was very grateful at the end of it and said, oh, I'm really grateful that we could actually have a conversation about this. And that was essentially a resolution, which meant that the thing didn't go on and fester, and there was no animosity or no residual resentment or anything else left behind. It was just dealt with because you're able to see what was going on.
Brilliant. So I'm really happy that we got to cover this today, because it is something, I think it's one of the more important topics, because just even if you don't do any introspection, even if you don't, if you just know that you're not being upset for something that is happening outside of you, if you accept that alone, will save you a massive amount of wasted energy and upsets and misery, and
damage relationships with people, and damage interactions with people beyond your own upset. I mean, it has such a ripple effect if you're not in control of this stuff.
That's right. And look, I mean, most since you speak about relationships, most problems between couples, like the intimate relationships, have to do with this kind of stuff. Right? People go to a marriage counselor and they deal with that kind of shit. You know what I mean? All the time. Oh, he said this to me. Yeah, but she did this to me. You know, and so I mean, how many? I'd say millions of cases of broken relationships could be avoided if we all knew that. I can't blame this person for being, for stepping on my hurt toe. They stepped on my hurt toe. But what really hurts is the fact that I have a wounded toe.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that wouldn't have been a big deal. So I think
that's been a good one. That's been a good one.
I think so. And I have to say, not to toot our horns, toot, but, we touch upon things that are not frivolous. They're important topics. They're very deeply thought-provoking and philosophical. And we don't ever prepare for this kind of conversation. It's just a conversation that happens. And I love that. I love that because this is, to me, that's what's authentic. What's authentic is I would love to have that conversation with you, my friend, whether or not we were being recorded.
Yeah. So that's been a good one.
So thank you.
Plus the fact that it's practical and it's real. I mean, it's bringing stuff that is potentially outside the realm of what people might consider to be relevant to them, and perhaps a little bit esoteric and woo even, and bringing it back down into day-to-day reality, because these situations are going on all the time, and as you rightly say, it's all going on up here, and while we're trying to survive, the way we have learned to survive is not always conducive to surviving. The way we've managed to do it when we were kids isn't really conducive to necessarily surviving now that we've gone beyond that phase. So it's I think it's hugely valuable, and for me it's great fun, and it's I could talk about this all night. I obviously would need some glasses of wine probably involved as well to do that, just to lubricate every so often, but I love talking about this.
Brought up an interesting idea. One of those podcasts we should do a drunken podcast.
That could be our shortest one.
Or our longest one.
Mainly because we probably forget to record something.
Oh yeah. Yes, you're right, my friend. And speaking of woo, another podcast should be how to create a lucky charm. And okay. I said that, and I'm not. Some people would think that this is a joke. It's not a joke at all. It's actually very, very valid. All this, remember, everything is connected to the subconscious mind, the collective unconscious, of course, and the gods and the goddesses and God and any kind of perceived woo-woo situation is all connected intimately with our subconscious mind, and therefore with who we are at core. So all this stuff is cool. It's really interesting, and it's it can be very useful in our everyday lives as well. On a day-to-day basis. People wear pendants, crosses, malas, what have you, to protect themselves energetically or spiritually. This stuff is not bullshit. There's a lot of valid reasons why all that stuff can help you, and a lot of those reasons have to do with your own perception, how you perceive the world, how you perceive your own subconscious mind, your own triggers, your own programs, your own conditioning. So you can defend. Think of it this way. I think of it this way many times. Defend yourself from your own conditioning, even, right? Imagine if you could make some kind of a talisman to protect yourself against your own conditioning. How magical would that be? So there you go.
So, wrapping it up.
And that was the 29th. And next week, we should probably bring a champagne, right? We should pop a champagne on the 30th. And the 30th is the 3.
Okay.
That's a really important number. And we can talk all about luck on that one. Oh, yes,
talk
of
about
course.
Luck.
Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that?
Being lucky. Yeah.
Boom. It has been decided. Now we don't have to agonize on the minute
Exactly.
of starting the podcast.
And I can prepare all week for a clever question for you.
Well, you have many of those and you don't even prepare now. Look at you. All right, my friend. Thank you so much for supporting this really interesting rant. And thank you out there, whoever you are, who support us and tolerate us. We love you. And having said that, until next week,
let's be careful out there.
And don't let your mind kill you.
Thanks for listening to Your Mind is Trying to Kill You with Alexandros Megas and Vincent Byrne. If you like our show and want to make sure that you don't miss an episode, then we would love if you would subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And you'd be doing us a big favor if you would support us by leaving a review as well. It would also be great if you would take a screenshot of this episode on your smartphone and share it on social media. So join us next Wednesday when we talk more about mind hacking and taking back control of your life. Until then, have a great week.